روحي وأرواح العالمين له الفداء، ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين إلى قيام يوم الدين. My dear brothers and respected sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. By the grace of Allah, we have reached the climax, you can say, the peak of this Ashra. We are now, before us is the night of Ashura, and tomorrow is the day of Ashura. What kind of a day is this, my dear brothers and sisters? With our worldly senses, we cannot perceive the reality of what is happening on this day. This is a day that when that event transpired until now, every year, the day of Ashura, there is something happening in the universe, but our eyes cannot see that. Sunni and Shia accounts of history alike narrate this fact that on the day of Ashura in the year 61 AH, there was strange events that happened in the universe. The sky rained blood. In one account, there's a famous Sunni scholar that lived at the time of Imam Sajjad alayhi salam. His name is Zuhri. It's in a famous book of Arabic literature written by Sunni scholars called Al-Aqd al-Farid. In that Al-Aqd al-Farid, there's an account of Zuhri, the Sunni scholar, talking to the caliph of that time, Abdul Malik bin Marwan. And they're talking about what happened on the day that Imam Hussein alayhi salam was killed. And basically, Zuhri tells the account to Abdul Malik, and Abdul Malik says, yes, that's true, that is what happened. What was it? That in Jerusalem, in Baytul Muqaddas, every stone that people would lift up, there would be fresh blood under that stone. We have this in our ahadith as well, that the universe, everything cried for Imam Hussein in its own way. In one of the ahadith, we have the sixth Imam telling one of his companions, Zurara, that, "O Zurara, the sky cried for 40 days over Hussein." How did it cry? By raining blood. And the earth cried for 40 days by some blackness coming out of the earth. And the sun cried for 40 days by a solar eclipse and by changing to be a kind of reddish color. And the mountains cried, and the seas cried by gushing forth, and everything, the mountains cried by somehow crumbling, and all of these cosmic events occurred on the day of Ashura. There are accounts in different books of history of people hearing crying, hearing the sounds of jinn crying. In Medina, by the grave of the Prophet, people could hear the voice of crying. People could hear poetry of jinn being recited in lamentation of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. And this is not just something that happened then. Every year, the day of Ashura is a special day. The heart of our Imam, that Ajjalallah Farajahu Sharif, that pivot of creation, that source of God's mercy, is anxious and sad on this day. Some of the great ulama, they used to give sadaqah on the night of Ashura to somehow bring happiness to the Imam, because they know what kind of stress the Imam is under on this day. One of the mujtahids who lived in Iran in the last few decades, he was a famous teacher in the Hawza, was somebody called Ayatollah Wijdani Fakhr. Once this Ayatollah Wijdani Fakhr, he went to a graveyard in Qom and he met this famous mystic, philosopher, mujtahid, mufassir of the Quran called Allama Tabatabai rahmatullah alayh. And it was the day of Ashura. And he narrates that he saw Allama Tabatabai was in a very strange state. He was very, very sad. He was crying. And when he saw Ayatollah Wijdani Fakhr, he told him that, "Oh Aghaya Wijdani Fakhr, do you know what day is today? Today is a day that is a very, very great day. It is a very difficult day for the Ahlul Bayt. And today, Allama Tabatabai is saying, as if he can see it himself, he's saying, today the whole universe is crying on a day like this." So, my dear brothers and sisters, we should somehow, first of all, appreciate the seriousness of this day, and then, to whatever extent we are able to, inshallah, we want to adhere to the adab that the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam have taught us. There are certain etiquette that we Shia should try to abide by on a day like this. You know, the enemies of the Ahlul Bayt, the Banu Umayyah, they went out of their way to make this day a day of happiness, a day of blessings. The way we have Boxing Day over here in this culture where people go and buy a lot of things for their entire year, the Banu Umayyah, la'natullahi alayhim, they would celebrate on this day by shopping, by saving things for their house, by fasting to give thanks to Allah Ta'ala. That's how wretched they were, to give thanks to Allah that Imam Hussein alayhi salam was killed. So on the other hand, the Ahlul Bayt told the Shia that it's really, really important to take off, to not work on this day, and to dedicate our day to crying, to participating in gatherings of mourning for Imam Hussein, recounting what happened to him, sending la'nat on his killers. We have a hadith from Imam al-Rida alayhi salam, "Man taraka as-sa'ya fi hawaijihi yawm Ashura, qada Allahu lahu hawaij ad-dunya wal-akhirah." Whoever takes off, basically, they stop working for the dunya on the day of Ashura. They don't work for their hajat, for their dunyawi needs. Allah will fulfill all of their hajat, both in the dunya and the akhirah that they have. And then the Imam goes on that for whoever the day of Ashura is the day of their musibah, the day of their huzn, sadness, the day of their crying, Allah Ta'ala will make the day of judgment to be the day of their happiness. And their eyes will be happy, pleased, cool on that day. They will be with us in paradise. And then on the other hand, he says, and this is now kind of keeping in mind what I just said about the Banu Umayyah, Imam Rida alayhi salam, he says that for whoever the day of Ashura is the day of barakah, whoever goes and buys things and saves up for their house and stores goods for their house, Allah will not give them any barakah in that. And in fact, they will be raised on the day of judgment with Yazid and Ibn Ziyad and Umar ibn Sa'ad, la'natullahi alayhim. So my dear brothers and sisters, this is one thing that we can do, that we take the day seriously, we take off, we try to not go to work, we try to come to these gatherings, participate in these gatherings of aza, and inshallah remember what happened to Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. Another piece of advice that some of the awliya of Allah, some of the great teachers of akhlaq, such as that same Allama Tabatabai who I mentioned, another piece of advice that he has is that if we can try to recite Ziyarat Ashura for 40 days in a row, starting from the day of Ashura up until the day of Arba'een, with the 100 la'an and the 100 salam. You know, that might seem like a lot, but these teachers, they have a suggestion for us. They say that what you can do is on the day of Ashura, recite it properly. Sit down, the way inshallah we will sit here tomorrow morning, sit down and recite the entire Ziyarat Ashura from beginning to end. But for the remaining 39 days up until the day of Arba'een, it's not necessary to just sit and do it in one go. It would take a really long time to do that. So what you can do is you can recite the beginning part of the ziyarah in the morning, for example, and then throughout the day you can do your la'an and salam. The 100 la'an, 100 salam, you can spread it out through the entire day. So inshallah, it doesn't take up so much of your time. If you're driving, if you're walking, if you have some time, you just continue to send the la'an and salam. Inshallah, this is another suggestion that teachers of akhlaq have given us. Maybe we can try to work on it. Sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. We were talking in the last 10 nights about, or 9 nights, about different things we can work on in our lives to join up with Imam Hussein, to somehow allow ourselves to be saved by Imam Hussein alayhi salam. I wanted to just again comment on this and reiterate the importance of this idea of how Imam Hussein alayhi salam, God has destined that he does play a very, very important role in people's lives, in creation. Okay, this is not, like I said in one of the previous nights, this is not to say that his station is higher, God forbid, than the Prophet. No. But still, there is something special about him because of his sacrifice, because of what he did in this world where he had to save the religion of Islam. He had to give everything. He had to be killed in the most ruthless way, by sword, by being starved, by being pierced by arrows and spears and everything. He had to see his family be sacrificed before him. Because of all of that he went through, that nobody else went through, he has that very special role in taking people towards Allah Ta'ala. Even if we look at his story, and we look at the account of the Maqtal, there are so many places where we see that Imam Hussein wanted to save people's hearts. He went and called Zuhair. He went and called other people as well who didn't listen to him at times. Before he reached Karbala, there was a place where he was close to, he had camped somewhere where another famous person from Kufa, Ubaidullah ibn Hur, had also camped. And so Imam tries to call him, invite him. Imam Hussein alayhi salam wanted to save people. That was his mission. This is the mission of all the awliya of Allah, to take our hand and take us towards true perfection in our lives. Taqwa, servitude to God, purity, piety. This is what we have been created for. And so we should really constantly remember this, that the Imam Hussein alayhi salam has this important role, and inshallah by us connecting to him, by us remembering him, this can now be a cause for us to live a life of servitude to him, inshallah. One of the names that Imam Hussein alayhi salam has in ziyarat is called Qatilul Abara. Qatilul Abara means the one who is the killed one of tears. And what does that mean? There's a lot of different theories of what it could mean. Qatil means somebody who is killed, maqtul, and Abara is a tear when you cry. But not just any tear. Abara comes from this word ubur, that like to pass through a certain place or to move is called ubur. Abara is a tear that doesn't just swell up in your eye, but it kind of comes over your cheek. It comes out. Okay, it passes over your cheek. One of the theories that teachers of spirituality have for this name, Qatilul Abara, is that Imam Hussein alayhi salam, God destined it, that he is the cause of this mercy of Allah spreading through mankind. Okay, a tear doesn't become to that level where it comes out and you don't cry so much that it comes down your cheek unless you are really full of emotion, full of sympathy, full of mercy. And so Imam Hussein's role is this, that by breaking people's hearts, he is the cause of people somehow going back to Allah, becoming pure, moving away from the filth of this dunya. So this is what we have been trying to remember in these days, that different things we can do in our life to, inshallah, live a life of servitude to Imam Hussein, benefit from Imam Hussein, not just the emotional part, but also the aspect of learning from his teachings and, inshallah, taking home practical points that we can work on in our lives. We talked about giving thanks, we talked about thinking and pondering, be it on our actions, be it on the signs of God. We talked about entrusting our affairs to Allah. We talked about worship. We talked about the divine promises, having faith in the divine promises. And then the last point that we had started talking about was basira, this kind of deep insight that we are supposed to have, that the Quran and the ahadith are encouraging us to attain, this deep insight. We said basira comes from the word basar. Basar means your vision, your sight that you can see with your eyes. And so basira is something similar, that at a time of confusion, at a time of fitna is when exactly that, there's confusion, people don't know where the haqq lies. At such a time, for us to figure out what our responsibility is, requires a deep insight. And not everybody has that. And that is something called basira. Imagine, for example, a war is going to happen. Okay? A war between two, maybe like equally, relatively equal, two armies are facing off against one another. In that situation, very often what happens is one army will send scouts, send people to go forward, to look out, to assess the enemy, to assess the terrain, to see where they have to fight, where their friends are, where their enemies are. If they don't do that, then what might happen is they may attack their friends. Okay, they may make a mistake. They may really want to fight well, but be causing more problems than good. And so this is the idea of basira, that basira requires us to kind of learn who our enemy is, learn where we need to put our efforts, not that we focus our efforts on something that is hurting the cause of Islam. I gave two examples yesterday. One of them was how we interact with our Sunni brothers, that we should see them as being part of the same ummah, part of the same party in a sense. We have the same enemies. We have to work together. Even at times, if they don't want to work with us, they have antagonism towards us, then we should say what Habil said to Qabil, that وَإِن بَسَطْتَ يَدَكَ إِلَيَّ لِتَقْتُلَنِي مَا أَنَا بِبَاسِطٍ يَدِيَ إِلَيْكَ لِأَقْتُلَكَ. That even if you want to kill me, I don't want to kill you. Okay, generally, our Sunni brothers are good people who have not been introduced to the reality of the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. They love their leaders because they think they are good people. And so a lot of these Sunni brothers are definitely, brothers and sisters, are good people who are Muslims, who are part of the same ummah as us, and we should not be unnecessarily causing division and somehow friction amongst the Muslim ummah. We have to realize that that is an agenda that the enemy has. Definitely. Okay? America and Britain and these countries would love to say that, oh, all the problems in the Middle East have nothing to do with colonialism. They have nothing to do with imperialism and Western, political agendas and political wars and everything that's happened. No, the problem is what? That the Shias and Sunnis hate each other. And they are the ones that are causing all the problems, which is not true. But unfortunately, sometimes we fall into this narrative, and unfortunately, we help our enemies in this way. Anyways, we spoke a little bit about basira yesterday. I don't want to speak more about it. I wanted to just comment now, and then inshallah today we'll move towards the musibah, maybe mention a little bit more in the musibah. Two ways that we can try to inculcate basira in ourselves. If basira is something that's hard, that not everybody has, not everybody can determine and have that insight, determine what they have to do and have that insight to realize where they need to put their efforts, what are two ways that we can try to work on our basira? These are these two fundamental wings that a believer must fly with, that again and again we see in the Quran. One of them is ilm and one of them is amal. One of them is using our intellect, thinking, learning, studying, learning what it is that God wants from us. I had given examples of how everybody, especially our youngsters, should take a course in Islamic beliefs. They should be able to prove for themselves that, why do I know? How do I know that there is a God? That God has all of these attributes, using the intellect, not using the Quran. I should be able to prove that just using my intellect. Why is it that there needs to be a hereafter? Why is it that Amirul Mu'mineen alayhi salam is the rightful successor to the Prophet? All of these need to be studied properly. Another area, akhlaq, another area, ahkam. We need to learn these things, and then we need to also somehow learn maybe more contemporary things of what's happening in the world, what Muslims need to be doing today, how our societies should be, how our Muslim communities should be working. All of this requires a lot of efforts. Somebody might say, no, I can't do this. I'm so busy studying. I'm so busy working. I don't have time. I wake up in the morning, I have to go to work. By the time I come back from work, I'm dead tired. There's no room in my life to learn. This is a problem, my dear brothers and sisters. Okay, not everybody needs to become a mujtahid. Not everybody needs to become like, memorize the Holy Quran. That would be great if we could memorize the Quran, but not everybody needs to do that. But there is a certain level of knowledge that we need to obey Allah in our life. If we don't spend the efforts to learn that knowledge, we're going to suffer. We're not going to be able to obey Allah. We're not going to reach those high levels of perfection that we could have attained. In one of the ahadith of Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, he says, "La basirata liman la fikra lah." There is no basira, this deep insight that I'm talking about. Nobody's going to have it if they don't think. First, we need to use our intellect, learn, study, think, ponder. Then we can, inshallah, come to this deeper understanding. Another hadith, he says, دوام الاعتبار يؤدي إلى الاستبصار. To think, to ponder, to take lessons. How many lessons? Everything we look at in our life, if we want to take a lesson out of it, we can take a lesson out of it. Okay, so if we only use our intellect to take lessons, then we would reach this deeper, nuanced understanding, this basira that we are after. But beyond just knowledge, maybe we can say even more important than that knowledge is taqwa, is that amal, that we need to be people who in our lives are actually obeying God. How many examples do we have of people in the tragedy of Karbala? We see such people. Even in our day and age, unfortunately, we see such people. People who have studied and studied and studied. Maybe they are a mujtahid. Maybe they are wearing the clothes of an alim. But they are in the service of the enemies of Islam. They have no basira. At times, maybe by mistake, at times, unfortunately, on purpose, they are working against the interests of Islam. Okay, so this is an example of how knowledge is not enough. We need something more than knowledge, and that is that taqwa, that desire to obey Allah, and that actual, obeying Allah, controlling our desires, controlling our anger when we are tested. In Surah Al-Qiyamah, there are some verses of Quran that make this point very nicely. Allah Ta'ala is asking people about this concept of the hereafter, of being resurrected. أَيَحْسَبُ الْإِنسَانُ أَن لَن نَجْمَعَ عِظَامَهُ. Does man really think that we will not gather his bones? We will not bring him back to life? So first Allah answers that. You can say maybe intellectually, He gives an answer that, look, you should agree, you should believe that this is possible for God. بَلَا قَادِرِينَ عَلَىٰ أَن نُسَوِّيَ بَنَانَهُ. Allah Ta'ala is able to do that. If He wants, He can resurrect us. And then Allah Ta'ala, maybe He somehow opens our eyes and hits at that key reason why people don't want to believe in the hereafter. It's not the case that a lot of people are intellectually have a philosophical, intellectual, academic problem that they don't accept. No, beyond that, sometimes is the issue of following their desires. The next verse, verse number 5. بَلْ يُرِيدُ الْإِنسَانُ لِيَفْجُرَ أَمَامَهُ. That indeed man wants to go on living in this sinful life, basically. So it's like some people know that where is the haqq. How many people in the camp of Yazid on the day of Ashura didn't know that Imam Hussein was on the haqq? Probably all of them knew. But what was it? It was their attachment to the dunya, like Umar ibn Sa'ad. It was their attachment to their desires that caused them to go against what they knew was the right course of action that they should have been taking. So this is another point. These two things together, inshallah, if we work on, one of them is our knowledge and one of them is our taqwa, then inshallah together we can somehow try to achieve this goal of basira. And indeed all of the other kind of points that we were talking about are very much related to this. Taqwa, my dear brothers and sisters, is that elixir that we are all after in our lives. That elixir, elixir is like some, ancient attempt to change copper into gold. Okay? The true elixir that can change our existence, our soul, our reality from being something that is worthless to something that is so valuable that it cannot even be imagined how valuable it is. The thing that will do that is that taqwa, that obedience to God in our life. One final point I want to make, inshallah, and then we can leave it at that, is the following, that to a certain extent, both of these, learning about the religion and then attaining that taqwa, both of them, one of the aspects that we need to have, my dear brothers and sisters, is a relationship in our lives with pious scholars. Ulama-e Rabbani, we would say in Farsi. This is a need that the Muslim community has. The Imams, alayhimus salam, in so many ahadith, they have advised and reminded people about the importance of this. In a sense, we can say that in the absence of our Imam, Ajjalallah Farajahu Sharif, the Imams have somehow passed on this responsibility. They have entrusted the Shia community with who? With scholars that have taqwa. Not just any scholar. Somebody who has studied the religion deeply and somebody who has a very high level of piety in their lives. I'll narrate 2 ahadith, but this should be clear if we think about it and we use our intellect that, I can't figure everything out that I need to know from reading a book. How many things are there that I won't find in the book? How many things are there that even if I found it in the book, it would take me so long to look for it that I wouldn't be able to practically use this as a way of answering my questions. I need to be in touch with a scholar. There needs to be somebody I can fall back on. In these nights when I get asked questions, I go back to my friends, my teachers, and I try to get the answer sometimes and then give it to people who came and asked me a question. That's the kind of intellectual, academic aspect of why we need a scholar. But beyond that, the very pure and pious teachers of akhlaq play another role altogether as well, where they can somehow guide us on this path of spirituality. They can give us an admonition that will hit at our heart, a maw'idah. They can tell us, okay, what ibadah, there's so many mustahabbat. If I open Mafatihul Jinan, I could spend my entire day worshipping God. But sometimes I need expert advice here that which mustahabbat should I be working on? Okay, so in both our knowledge and in also our spirituality, we need this connection with pious scholars to help us out. One of the ahadith from Imam Baqir alayhi salam, he says, Al-alimu kaman ma'ahu sham'atun tudi'u lin-nas. A scholar, the parable of a scholar, the similitude of a scholar is like somebody who has a candle. And because of this candle, he is illuminating the darkness for other people. فَكُلُّ مَنْ أَبْصَرَ شَمْعَتَهُ دَعَا لَهُ بِخَيْرٍ. Whoever is like, his environment is lit up by that candle, then the alim is calling him to goodness. كَذَلِكَ الْعَالِمْ مَعَ الشَّمْعِ. Attacking the religion, attacking tashayyu', attacking our beliefs. Sometimes we even have people who, like I just said, they may have even studied. They may even be wearing the clothing of a scholar, but when you talk to them, they are causing problems and causing doubt in the hearts of salawat. He says, and I'll just translate, I won't read the Arabic. He says, don't sit with an alim who calls you, don't sit with an alim unless he is an alim who calls you from five claims to have studied. We want to go to people who have knowledge and these kind of qualities. He is calling you from shak to yaqeen. To certainty. He is taking you from riya. Riya is ostentation, showing off, bad akhlaq basically, to ikhlas, to sincerity. He is entire life to be blessed by these gatherings, that wherever we are somehow safe because we are under the flag of, we are part of the caravan of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless all of the volunteers and the admin who are helping to run these programs and protect all of them and all of us, inshaAllah. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to cure all of the mu'mineen and mu'minat, especially the families of you dear brothers and sisters who are sick. And lastly, we ask that Allah ta'ala hastens the appearance of our Imam, Ajjalallah farajahu sharif, and makes us from his followers, inshaAllah. نهار ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. Peace be upon you, O our beloved Imam Hussein. Peace be upon you, O the Master of Martyrs. Peace be upon you, O Ship of Salvation. O Imam Hussein, يا ليتنا كنا معكم سيدي. That reward that nobody else will ever attain. What is happening on this night in the camp of Imam al-Hussein? There are different accounts of the conversation that Imam Hussein had on the night of Ashura with his He tells them, look up now, look up, and one by one he shows them their position in paradise. And he tells them, this is your station, O Fulan, this is your station. And such was the case that they knew where they were going to. On the day of Ashura, they didn't have any fear. They were going bravely into the battlefield without any concern because they knew where they were going. They were going to paradise. Another thing that happened on this night is that Imam Hussein alayhi salam is planning for tomorrow. He's planning his military tactics. He moves the camps, the tents of his family and his companions to be close to one another. And behind the tents, he has a ditch dug and fire ignited so that the enemy does not attack from the back. There is a heart-rending incident of Zainab, but we mentioned that a few nights ago, so I won't mention it. Another thing that happens on this night is that towards the morning, Imam Hussein alayhi salam falls asleep briefly. When he wakes up, he tells his companions that, do you know what I just saw in my dream? They ask him, what was it that you saw, O son of Rasulullah? Sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He says, it was as if I could see that there were dogs that were coming to bite me, to tear me apart. And there was one dog that his skin was spotted. And I think that there is going to be somebody who has such a skin issue, leprosy, that was Shimr bin Dil-Jawshan, who is going to be the one who will kill me. And then he says, I also saw my grandfather Rasulullah and a group of his companions, and he was telling me that, oh my son, you are the Shaheed of Ali Muhammad. The people of the heavens are waiting to welcome you, O Hussein. Tonight your iftar will be with us, O Hussein. Come, ajil, ajil, O Hussein. One other thing that happened, my dear brothers and sisters, and this goes back to what I was saying about how Hussein wanted to save everybody. Hussein alayhi salam is that magnificent manifestation of God's mercy. He wants to save us as well from the fire of hell. Another thing that happened is on the night of Ashura, it is narrated in more than one source that 32 of the enemy soldiers joined the camp of Hussein. And some of our ulama, they say maybe that was why, in fact they say that was why Imam Hussein asked for one night of respite. His whole life, his whole existence was drowned in Allah. He didn't need one more night to worship the way that he said, I want to worship. Rather, he wanted a chance to save some more people. Imagine those people like Hur. One moment they were in the worst of situations. They were going to be some of the people who were going to be the killers of Imam Hussein, and the next moment they have reached the highest level. Let us now go, my dear brothers and sisters, to the Asr of Ashura. The time comes when all of the companions have been martyred. The only people left in the camp of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam are the Banu Hashim, the sons of Aqil, the sons of Ja'far, the grandsons of Amirul Mu'mineen alayhi salam. They know that now the time has come for them to go. They begin bidding farewell to one another. Give me a moment here. There was one of our great ulama who lived recently, somebody who has authored books in ulum al-Quran, in the sciences of Quran. His name was Hadi Ma'rifat. This Hadi Ma'rifat, Allah blessed him with many children, but he had one child who he had a lot of hope in. His name was Ali. Hadi Ma'rifat was a really, really busy person. He had all these responsibilities in the government and in the Hawza, but his goal in his life was to write a book on ulum al-Quran. He had a lot of hope in this one son of his who was hardworking, who was a student of the Hawza, that this son will fulfill my goal. He will do what I never got to attain. And then that son of his, from all his other sons, that son went to the battlefield. In the Iran-Iraq war, he was martyred. And you can imagine how difficult that was for Hadi Ma'rifat. The subsequent works that he wrote a dedication to his son. He said that you are a part of me, I had all my hope in you, and God took you away from me, basically. But we would say to Hadi Ma'rifat, oh Hadi Ma'rifat, there was somebody else on the day of Ashura. Oh Hadi Ma'rifat, there was another father who had a very special son. There was another father who lost his grandfather when he was but a child. And that beautiful face of his grandfather was etched in his heart. And then when he grew up, Allah blessed him with a child. What kind of a child? A child that was so much like the Holy Prophet. Imam Hussein alayhi salam says about Ali al-Akbar, when Ali al-Akbar goes into the battlefield, فقد برز إليهم غلام أشبه الناس خلقا وخلقا ومنطقا برسولك. This is so difficult for Imam Hussein alayhi salam to see his son Ali go into the battlefield, that he is doing dua to Allah. Oh Allah, you bear witness on this enemy army. Somebody has gone now to go fight them who is the most similar in his ethics, he is the most similar in his speech to the Holy Prophet. When we wanted to see the Prophet, we would look at this son of mine, Ali al-Akbar. Ali al-Akbar is the first from the family to go to the battlefield. This is the Ismail of Hussein. This is the Qurbani of Hussein. He seeks permission from his father. When it comes to Qasim, Hussein doesn't want to give permission. But when it comes to his own son, he doesn't hesitate. فاستأذن أباه في القتال فأذن له. Ali al-Akbar goes into the battlefield. أنا علي بن الحسين بن علي نحن وبيت الله أولى بالنبي. He is introducing himself. The enemy knows who he is. I am Ali, the son of Hussein, the son of Ali. We are closer to the family, we are closer to the Prophet from these enemies. أضربكم بالسيف حتى ينثني ضرب غلام هاشمي علوي. Ali al-Akbar is fighting bravely again and again. He is attacking the enemy until the enemy is crying out. They are so scared of him. According to one account, he kills 120 of the enemy soldiers in this first part. And then something very strange happens on the plains of Karbala. Ali al-Akbar is seen returning back to his father. What does he have to say to his father? Ya Aba al-Atash qad qatalani. Oh my father, the thirst is killing me. The heavy weight of this armor is tiring me out. Is there no way that I can get one sip of water? What can Hussein say to his son? Hussein cries, Wa ghawtha. Oh my son, go and fight a little bit. Very soon your grandfather will give you a glass of water. He will quench your thirst. Ali goes back into the battlefield. He continues to fight. The time comes that he has killed 200 of the enemy soldiers. The army of Yazid is scared of him. But there is one wretched individual, Murrah bin Munqadh. He tells the person next to him, may all the sins of the Arabs be upon me if I don't make his father mourn over him. Attacks the next time. Murrah goes, according to one account, he goes with a spear. He pierces Ali al-Akbar. Imam Hussein hears a cry. It's like Ali al-Akbar wants to tell his peace be upon you, O my father. This is my grandfather here. He is quenching my thirst. Imam Hussein alayhi salam goes to the body of his son. Normally it is a son that has to go to the body of his father. But here the father goes to the body of his son and he's crying. But somebody else comes out as well. Zainab Salamullahi alayha comes out and she throws herself on the body of Ali. Imam Hussein alayhi salam takes Zainab back to the tent and he tells the youth of the Banu Hashim to bring the body of Ali. Ala la'natullah ala al-qawm al-zalimin. وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون. صلى الله على محمد وآل محمد.